Let's talk about taxes and markup. And as I indicated earlier, when you're on your estimate screen, what you see on the top of the screen uh, does include the markup values and does include taxes. How do you assign markup to an estimate? You pick an estimate. I've selected the customer A estimate 2 estimate. You go to the preferences screen, and that's where you do this. So I'm going to clear out the assignments by touching the clear button. Let's start with taxes on the top left. You can have multiple tax rates for different locales where you're doing a particular estimate for. You select the rate, touch add, and you need to touch it again for labor. So you may have the same tax rate for labor and materials, or they could be different, probably the same. Markup, you're probably going to want to have more than one markup item, more markup rate, because you may have different markups for different customers, and you may have a different markup for labor than you do for materials. So for markup, you just, on the lower left, select a markup rate. Let's say I've got a different markup for labor. I touch labor, and I got one for materials, and I touch add there. So I've got a 50% for labor and a 30% for materials. So that's real straightforward. Then if you were looking at an estimate, pick a different estimate, and you see these numbers, but you're not sure what the numbers correspond to. On the left, you just type show, and that will tell you this 6.75 is for this Anoka County, or this 30% rate is for that particular markup item. Now let's go back to taxes. Taxes are a little bit more complicated. Estimate Master can accommodate many different tax structures. You can have 3 different parts of materials taxes, up to 3 taxes, and same with labor, up to 3. So you could have 6 different taxes if you would want to be that complicated. And the tax rates, this is a percent. First of all, you can indicate in the tax rate if that includes markup or not. Here it doesn't, there it does. And where you have multiple taxes, like for example in Canada, they have a general sales tax, and each province has a tax as well. So sometimes they have two different provincial taxes, and in some cases one tax is calculated on top of another, and when that tax is to be calculated on top of another, it's called the piggyback tax. So you indicate whether yes or no if it's a piggyback tax. So by your tax situation may be fairly simple. You maybe just have one tax rate for everything, and that's fine, but you need to put one item in there. And if it's going to be a tax exempt situation, then what you should do is create a new tax by typing plus and putting in a 0 tax rate, like so. Then assign that 0 rate. Same with markup. You didn't want to have any markup. You still need to put in a 0 markup rate and then assign that. Because I think I indicated earlier, you cannot print an estimate unless you've assigned tax and markups both. So tax exempt, just put a 0 item in and add it 0, so that it's specified even though it's 0. Same with markup. You notice as soon as I, for a particular estimate, as soon as I assign rates, when I go back to the estimate screen, it immediately reflects the markup and taxes. So here I've got a tax exempt now, zero markup, and the totals are quite different, no taxes. So it's deceptively simple, but actually you can accommodate virtually any tax structure, I believe. Um, you can have multiple tax rates on top of each other if necessary. You can decide to include markup or not include markup in your taxes, and the markups items can be you can have multiple markup rates um, in a given estimate. And by the way, so generally you assign a general tax to all items in this mechanism on the preferences screen, but if you look at the parts and materials and labor screens, you'll see two columns, tax and markup. Now they're normally yes, both of them, which means whatever you assign in the preferences screen applies. If you have labor items or a labor item that you don't want taxed, you put a no in the tax column for that particular item. And then when the general overall tax is calculated, it doesn't calculate for items that are marked no. And the same with markup. In some cases the pricing you put in the material screen may already include a markup. In that case, you don't want to add another markup on top of it, so you just say markup no. So then when you go back to the preferences screen, when it calculates markup on items that are marked no in the individual item areas, no markup is applied. So you can have it both ways. You can have some materials that are totally tax exempt, individual item, mark it no, taxes will never be calculated on it, and same with markup. If you mark it no, the general markup will not be applied, and that may be a case where you've got a markup already included in the price per. So you have a lot of flexibility in the taxing and the markup per item as well as in general case.